Hi, everyone. We're so excited to be here with you today for this conversation about diversity in retail. I'm DeAnna McIntosh. I am the executive director at Diversify Retail Inc., which is a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing minority representation in the retail industry. And I'm so excited to have today Latoya, and I'm not going to butcher her last name. I will let her tell
No
you.
worries. Right, right, right. No
so,
worries.
Latoya, if you'll introduce yourself and tell everybody about you and your amazing business.
Yeah, so I'm Latoya Tusaroni. I have a very Italian husband. You are not the first one. People usually just butcher it. They're like, "Oh,
Right.
we'll recover later. It's fine." So I appreciate you just letting me say it. So yeah, I live here in Atlanta, Georgia. Got an amazing husband, 4 kids, and I'm the founder and CEO of Sustainable Home Goods at Ponce City Market. We're a fair trade and ethically sourced home decor store. So we work with artisans all over the world and locally. And we just help people to do good with the purchases that they make for their home. So yeah,
Yes. And I love your store. I love your candles. Love everything about
thank you.
it.
So fun.
So, yes. So, my favorite thing to do this year is to just ask business owners if you could describe 2020 in one
Hmm.
word, what
Hmm.
would it be and why?
Yeah, that is such a good question. And I mean, literally the first thing that comes to mind is pivot.
Yes.
Like, because it was such a weird, yeah, it was just like such a weird thing. It was kind of
Mhm.
like in January, it was like business as usual. And
Right.
then you heard this thing creeping kind of in the background. And then all of a sudden it was there. And, as a business, we really had to decide. Like you felt like you were kind of at a crossroads. Like,
Right.
you could either choose to bow out and say, hey, it's been a good ride. A pandemic is a great reason to kind of be like, okay, that was fun, you
Hmm.
know? Or it was time to pivot and say, okay, what do we do with this new world that we're now living in?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so, we had to pivot for a pandemic. We
Hmm.
had to pivot for the Black Lives Matter movement and this huge spotlight now being placed on Black owned businesses,
Right.
So we had to pivot in growth,
Hmm.
not only in business, but in staff and the vision of the company. So, yeah, 2020 was just a year of just constantly having to pivot, and in
Hmm.
a good way. I mean, I think
Yeah.
it helps you to grow. To me, I was like, out of this pandemic, you are either going to see, yeah, things crumbling, or you're going to see ingenuity and
Right.
people having to like really innovate their processes. And
Yeah.
I found that in some ways to be like interesting, so and
Yeah.
exciting. So it was just a
Hmm.
real dichotomy of emotions in 2020. Yeah,
Yeah, to
yeah,
say the least.
yeah,
Absolutely. I think for me, my word would be perseverance.
yes, yes.
I'm not going to call him a COVID baby because he's not, but I got pregnant
Right.
during this, so I'm 7
Right.
months pregnant right now. But
And look
yeah,
amazing.
thank you.
Mhm.
Trying to hold it together here. So if I sound out of breath, you know why.
Right.
but yeah, so adjusting to pregnancy, the life of being pregnant, and I mean, my own business I've changed multiple times. And
Right.
in Diversify Retail, the nonprofit started off as just an initiative because I saw what happened in the support for Black owned businesses. But I saw these retailers, big retailers, making pledges and committing, or so they say, to
Right.
diversity and inclusion. But there was like a lot of talk, but no action and solutions. So during last summer, I was like, all right, well, I think it needs to be more than just an initiative. It needs to be a
Yeah.
full fledged nonprofit so I can make sure that these brands and the retailers get the support that they need. And
Right.
not just Black owned businesses, but Diversify Retail is for minorities overall. So I'm helping people of color everywhere. So
I love
last year
that.
was definitely perseverance for
Mm-hmm.
me personally and professionally. And
Mm-hmm.
this year, 2021, has just continued, it seems like, from 2020 in a
Yep.
lot of ways. So we're all just hanging in there. Love
Oh
it.
my gosh. Yes.
So, Latoya, what big shifts did you have to make because of the COVID impact? Like, what big things come to your mind that you had to do within the business?
Um, so there were two really big things, and that was really having to shift from being primarily a brick and mortar to reverting back to e-commerce, which
Mm-hmm.
is funny because when I first started, I started out kind of e-commerce, but it was really slow.
Yeah.
And the reason why I even went to brick and mortar was because the e-commerce side was so slow. And I
Mm.
noticed that when I got to interact with people, that's when, our business did the best. So I was like, well, let me open a brick and mortar because
Mm-hmm.
that's how people want to engage with our product. So it's funny that
Love
really COVID completely switched that. And so
it.
we had to go from having a few products online to having absolutely everything online.
Mm-hmm.
So that means photographing, descriptions, just all the little things that need to go on. And then getting a shipping setup,
Yes.
and again, when things like exploded, it was like, oh, okay, this is like a whole new, just like dynamic for our business. And so really having to do that, and then also just really figuring out ways to hustle to keep my employees. At that time when COVID first hit, I had 2 employees, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I've got to do everything I need to do to keep these amazing women
Mm-hmm.
that I work with. And so, yeah, so those were two big shifts of like
Yeah.
having to look at financing differently just to keep
Yes.
my employees intact, because the
Absolutely.
revenue was no longer coming from the business
Mm-hmm.
when it first happened. So, yeah.
That's fair. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think, the pandemic was, and again, continues to be,
Continue.
yeah, having a major impact to all of us, right? Personally and professionally. And what we also
Right.
have mentioned is that last year, what emerged even stronger than ever before was the call against social injustice towards Black
Yes.
people, right?
Yep.
And we just saw the whole world come together for us for once.
Mhm.
Right?
It was quite amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
Mm,
And so like you said, it brought major attention on black businesses more than I've ever seen in my little 32
mhm.
years on this earth. But
Mhm.
and I think, diversity and inclusion, it's not just for black people, obviously, but
Mhm.
it's for all
Mhm.
people. And when people ask, is diversity important? Why is it
Mhm.
important? How is it important? Well, personally, it isn't important because it's not important to
Mm,
everyone, right? So
right.
I think diversity is important. It absolutely is. But if
Right.
you guys watching don't think that, then it's not to you, right?
Mm,
So
mhm.
I think I always tell people the first thing when we have these type of conversations is to look inside yourself. What
Mm,
do you believe in? Is diversity
mhm.
and inclusion and equity for all people a part of your core value system? Because if it is, then this conversation is for you, right? If
Right.
it's not, then you're probably not going to care about what we're talking about right now. And
Mm,
it's just to be honest, right? Because again, a lot of these companies are making statements and saying that they support diversity. But I've personally talked to a lot of these same companies about
mhm.
diverse by retail and what we do and how we're here to support them and together create a long-term solution for diversity and just making sure that it's not just about bringing in a black person to your office or hiring
Right.
somebody to your
Right.
executive team. It's much deeper than that. Like when they
Right.
come to your store or when you hire them, do they feel welcome? Do they want,
Right.
do they feel like they should be there? Right? Like when I look at your social media feed, do I see myself? No.
Mm,
So it's deeper than just saying something or just doing
right.
one action. It's about the process to get there. So do I think diversity is important? Absolutely. I would
Mm-hmm.
love for everyone to think that it is as well. And really, just because this country, America, is diverse, like the world is diverse,
Right, right,
right?
right. It's like,
So,
duh.
right, exactly. So it's just, diversity makes the world beautiful and
Mm,
interesting. And so if that's something that you believe in, then your business, your values, everything you say, everything you do should reflect that as well. And also, great place to work. They cite that diverse and inclusive workplaces lead to higher revenue and a greater readiness to innovate. And I think those things are
mm,
really important too, because you'll hear oftentimes, diversity doesn't add to my bottom line. Well, that's not
mm-hmm,
true.
mm,
That's not true for many
mm-hmm,
reasons. And also, who are your customers? Like you mentioned, you can see your customers, right, when they're coming into your store. But your
mm-hmm.
online customers, more than likely, are people of all different backgrounds. So your images should reflect that. You should want them to reflect that, as well as
Right.
your staff, right? It's a whole full circle effort in this regard. But again, there's been a lot of performative acts that have happened. We're now in 2021. It's been about, I don't know, 6 months, 7 months since Black Lives Matter first really emerged in a big way. And
Mm-hmm.
all you have to do is look on social media, right?
Right.
Like, I'm sure you've seen in the comments, or like, they post something about diversity or supporting Black people, but then the comments in their employees say otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like we said, we want to talk today about just how to help you become a more inclusive and diverse retailer if that's what's in your heart to do, and that's where you see the future of your company going. So,
Mm-hmm.
Latoya,
Mm-hmm.
as a
Yes,
Black woman
yes.
yourself, how
Mm-hmm.
has your journey in retail been? And I mean, I can tell you mine has been extremely rough. So, would love to know how yours has been.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting. I didn't realize that I would be pioneering in some ways, like
Yeah.
when I entered into this,
Mhm.
because I'm so thankful that our first brick and mortar was able to open up on such a large platform like Ponce City Market, and
Yes.
working with a company like Jamestown that has properties all over the country, and Ponce City Market being literally like the hottest retail hub in Atlanta, essentially, and
Yeah.
kind of getting thrust onto that platform. And then getting there and realizing, oh, I'm the only Black owned like retailer
Yeah.
here apart from food,
Hmm.
and being like, oh, okay, that's interesting, you know.
Right.
So I think that, yeah, not really realizing that I would be pioneering. I think
Hmm.
in some ways getting people to take you seriously,
Yes.
and not pigeonhole you or your product.
Hmm.
I think we've had to be really intentional to in our storytelling and in our sourcing and things like that, to kind of break through stereotypical tropes about what a Black owned business would look like, while still firmly displaying, like, yes, we are a Black female owned business. And
Hmm.
juggling those two things, that yes, we are a Black business and we love that and we stand in that firmly, but also being inclusive
Yeah.
in everything we do at the same time, so I think that as a Black woman, it just feels like you're always just juggling a lot of
Right.
different things, and a lot of
Hmm.
different ideas that people kind of put on you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, learning how to stand in who I am, um, proudly, and remain inclusive as well. I think investment as a business owner has been interesting
Hmm.
journey in and of itself. I think that's been really hard. Again,
Yeah.
to have people really take you seriously. And as you know, all the
Mhm.
statistics that Black female owned businesses are just way, 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 way underfunded,
Yeah.
um, which ends up limiting what we're able to do
Mhm.
as a
Exactly.
business. And so, yeah, so again, having to really think out of the box in that.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so I would say those have been definitely some of the challenges, but I also see challenges as opportunities
Yes.
to do something new and exciting and to, um, yeah, be a bold face and voice within this retail space that is very, Eurocentric,
Yeah.
and I
It
don't even
is.
think I realized, yeah,
Right. Right. For
so
sure.
yeah, yeah.
So you brought up a really great point, Latoya, which is the funding piece. And that's really what prompted me, one of the many reasons that prompted me to turn Diversify Retail into a nonprofit, because I saw these big retailers, one, reaching out to brands saying,
Hmm.
here's a couple terms, please agree to this so I can announce your participation tomorrow. And
Wow.
these brands are like, oh my gosh, I just got my first major deal with a big retailer. And I'm like,
Hmm.
that's not how this works. It could take you a
Mm-mm.
whole year of onboarding to get into their warehouses and on their websites. And they can't just send you an
Hmm.
email. And you don't really know what you're agreeing to, for one.
Hmm. Yep.
And
Yep.
then for two, the money piece. Because
Right.
if they place 1,000 unit order with you or more, how are
Hmm.
you going to make that happen? Because you
Right.
better believe they're not paying for it up front.
Nope.
So,
Nope.
and if they don't have the funding to front all of the production costs and everything else that goes into working with one of these big retailers, it's just
Right.
gonna flop, right? So then
Right.
it's over before it began.
Right.
So, and even so, last summer, after the murder of George Floyd and the protests began and the wave of support happened for Black-owned businesses, a similar situation happened, just on a smaller scale. I mean, there were Black-owned businesses that were out of stock for months,
Mm, yeah.
right? Did any of
Right.
like how did that all impact you?
Yeah, I mean, it that exactly, like, we were killing ourselves trying to ship, 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 ship,
Yeah.
and, because it exploded, and again, at the time, it was only me and then, like, 2 other women, and then one of them was in school,
Mm-hmm.
so she was just working part-time, and so we were just burning ourselves out. And
Right.
again, a pivot point, right? It's like we had to look at this situation and ask ourselves, is this real?
Right.
Like, okay, is this going to be a movement or a moment? Because
Mm-hmm.
I have to decide as a business owner, do I invest in this or do I just like hold out because it's going to just die out?
Right.
And invest for us look like, do I bring more hands, like hire more?
Mm-hmm.
Because we were hitting that. We were just like, um, we were seeing Black owned businesses, other ones who were struggling to get product out,
Right.
get it out in time. Then people start complaining about them. And then just this vicious cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't want to get swept up in that cycle. So we were being very intentional about shipping as fast as we could and just trying to be really excellent with that. But we were burning ourselves out
Yeah.
at the same time. So
Right.
eventually, I just had to make the decision that even if this was a platform, for people learning about our business, it was on us to
Mm-hmm.
keep them as customers.
Right.
And so we needed to be as excellent as we could be. And so I did end up hiring people to
Mm-hmm.
come and work with us so we could do the shipping and not just completely burn ourselves out because we knew that the brick and mortar was going to eventually have to reopen. So it's like we have to start creating good structures and processes now. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that is a huge, huge issue for a lot of Black owned businesses
Mm-hmm.
is the ability to scale.
Right. Right.
And I think you and I have talked about this a couple of times,
Mm-hmm.
that it's like name one national retail brand that is Black owned, that is
Right.
not food. And people might be like, oh, maybe because those brands aren't excellent or anything. No, no, no. It has nothing to do.
Right.
Excellent product, excellent branding. But if you don't have access to the
Hmm.
funds to grow on that level,
Right.
it's very, very, very hard to do. And so
Right.
yeah, that is definitely like a reality. And so
Hmm.
we had to just decide, yeah, even if this is a moment, we're going to treat it as if, you know what, these are new customers and we're just going to blow them away to the
Yeah.
point where they'll just want to come and continue to shop with us. And so,
Right.
yeah, 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 it was good. It was bittersweet, I will say as
Hmm.
well. And I'm
Sure.
sure a lot of Black business owners were feeling this. You're like, wow, we're on this huge platform, thankful for it, but just really broken about how it had
How
to
it had to happen.
happen. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
really sad because you're just like, there are so many amazing Black owned brands out there that have been hustling and doing the work for so
Hmm.
long. It just sucked that like people had to die in order
Right.
for that spotlight to happen,
Hmm.
you
So
know.
true.
Yeah, so you're just like, again, you're happy for the business, you're thankful for these new opportunities, but
Hmm.
you're like, dang, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, like you're saying, I mean, it's all about authenticity too.
right, right,
Whether it's
right,
a movement or a moment, like you said,
right,
these
right,
retailers scrambling to add Black brands to their shelves. Like,
right,
why are you doing it? Again, look at yourself
right,
and understand, is it just so that you can say that you did something so that it
right,
can look good? Because
right,
everyone can see right through
right.
that.
Right.
Truly.
And we got postured in so many ways,
Yeah.
you know,
Hmm.
and I mean, I had one company come to us to do the products for their like conference or event. And I literally asked her, I'm like, oh, how'd you find us? And
Hmm.
she's like, this is going to sound horrible, but I just Googled Black owned business. And we were on Forbes 100 Black owned business list. And so that's
Mm.
how she found us. And so, oh,
Yeah.
it's just such a mix of emotions, right? Because you're like,
Right.
I'm thankful you found us and I
Yeah.
will take your money, but
Right, right.
you're also
But
like, would you have worked with us if you just didn't Google Black owned business? You know,
and see,
like,
that's the question that people need to ask themselves.
right,
Like
right,
truly, are
right,
why are you doing this? What are your motives behind it? Because like
right,
I said earlier, if that's not really truly what you believe in and what you're about, don't do it.
right,
Like I
right.
don't want you to do
Don't,
anything.
right.
And
Don't get caught up in the moment,
yeah.
but be a part of the movement. Be a
Right.
part of, yes, this needs to
Exactly.
happen. We need more diverse voices in our
Mhm.
store. And be part of moving this forward for
Yes.
the long run. Like, you each have a choice to make as you are curating your products in your store.
Hmm.
Um, you have to be intentional about that kind of
Right.
stuff and ask yourself those questions. Yeah.
And that's the perfect segue because,
Right.
when usually when people say the word diversity or inclusion,
Right.
their mind goes straight to like, okay, Black owned brands or, employment, usually actually,
Mm,
because the injustice towards Black people that have occurred
right.
for centuries at this point. But it's not just about employment, like we said. So as a
Right.
retailer, as you guys
Yeah.
are, it's about the diversity in your founders of the products that you're buying.
Yes.
And with Latoya, with your company, I've always loved the stories behind everything that you do and how you
Yeah.
yourself, because that's another thing, right? That a lot of people don't want to go there. But like, if we as people, any people, are talking about
Right.
diversity, whether you yourself are a diverse person, so me myself, you yourself, are you incorporating diversity into your own business? So it's
Right.
not just white people incorporating black people or
Right.
whatever the case is. No, black people, are you incorporating diverse people as well? All of us.
Right.
So,
Right.
you
Well,
know,
exactly, because I think it's so easy as a business owner to just say, okay, what's going to make me the most money? Like,
right.
what are people buying?
Mhm.
And while, yes, obviously making money is important, but to me, business is such a beautiful platform, and retail especially is such a
Yes.
beautiful platform that can be greater than that.
Hmm.
So to me, the challenge with diversity as a retailer is, man, I get to introduce people to these amazing voices and to
Right.
these amazing artists that maybe they haven't seen before. And I
Hmm.
feel like that actually, like you said, when you have a more diverse workplace, it actually increases revenue. Well, I believe when you have a more diverse product offering and you're introducing people to voices they haven't heard before, and it's authentic and real, and it's representative of like our world, like people respond to that. I think people are
Hmm.
looking for more authentic connections with the things that they buy. And
Yes.
so that whole idea of diversity actually bringing in more revenue is very reflective in the retail environment. And,
Hmm.
people come to us now because they know that they're going to see things and voices and artists and pieces that they're literally not going to find anywhere else.
Right.
Like a great example is my family and I got to go to New Mexico. And one of the reasons why we chose New Mexico is because we wanted to bring Indigenous voices into the
Hmm.
retail space, because that is not a voice that you hear very
Right.
often when you walk into a store. And there's so many amazing Native artists, like
Yeah.
so many. And so we were just really intentional about that. Like, let's bring this into this retail space that's very mainstream.
Yeah.
And people have absolutely loved it. So, yeah, I think it's
That's
so
beautiful.
important. And I think as a Black woman, yeah, because I want my voice to be heard as a Black woman. I want access to those platforms. So, why would I deny my sister, my brother, access to those when my whole business is a platform? It's like,
Uh,
open the door,
yeah.
let people in,
Right. Take somebody with you.
Right, right. Many people if you
Absolutely.
can. So yeah.
Absolutely. No, I love
Mm,
that. That's beautiful.
yeah.
That was awesome, Latoya. Very insightful and just great for, I think, for everyone to understand that we are all responsible for really creating a diverse environment within our businesses, within our
Hmm.
personal lives, and everything. It's Black people included, right?
Right,
So,
right.
and I just want to encourage everybody watching to think bigger. So think bigger about your brand and who you want to be, what you want to put out into the world,
Mm.
and not saying anything at all is saying everything.
Yes. Ah,
Like, I
yes.
cannot say that enough. So
Right.
if you're thinking that not saying anything will help you save some customers or, whatever, keep you in the neutral zone, that's not a good place to be.
Mm-mm.
Right?
That's not what people want
No,
either.
it's not.
So
It's
yeah.
not. And again, if you look inside yourself and this is what you're about and you do lose some customers, you should be grateful, right? That should be an okay thing to lose
Right.
customers who don't align with your values.
Right.
And again, saying that you're for diversity, but every time I look at your Instagram feed, I don't see that, or your website,
Mm.
or
Mm.
let's see, your marketing material, or the events that you host. If that doesn't align with that, that's
Mm-hmm.
saying something too. That's immediately red flagging that you're just talking and it's
Mm.
performative and you don't actually
Right.
what you say.
Right.
Yeah. So, what I'd love for everybody to do today is to just stop and look at your vision and your goals for your business this year. Like, truly stop and look. And then see if you've incorporated diversity and inclusion into those goals. Like,
Mm.
truly.
Mm-hmm.
And if no, you can still fix that. And
Mm-hmm.
even if, yes, you can still make that even bigger a part of your
Mm-hmm.
vision and your goals. And just really be very specific and identify every area of your organization that lacks diversity. It could be every area.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you're really clear in identifying which areas of your organization need diversity. And then once you've done that, stop and identify why. Be honest with yourself. Why is it that you haven't hit your diversity like vision, or why you're not diverse at all? Why? Because you need to know why to be able to correct that and become a more inclusive organization going forward.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, we all have unconscious biases. I'm sure you've heard that phrase a million times. We all do. But now is the time to bring those biases up to the forefront and deal with them head on so that you can move on, eliminate them hopefully, and create a path forward for your organization. And honestly, that could mean that you're gonna have to let some of those employees go that you have that have those biases and aren't trying to get rid of them. Right?
Right.
Like we have to be
Right.
honest. There's some
Right.
people that are not gonna make it with you. But again, if that is something that is important to you, then that is just one step closer to being where you want to be. And hard things have to happen for that to happen.
Right.
So, the next thing I would tell you to do is to list two things that you can do to increase diversity in those areas where you lack. At least two. Sure, you can come up with a lot more. But some examples are if your marketing material is lacking diversity, well, then have a conversation with your marketing agency if you work with one. Or you yourself seek out influencers of color, right? That
Mm-hmm.
seems so simple, but probably didn't do it before. But that's a really easy way for you to not only get marketing for your business, but to get the diverse representation that you need and get a fresh perspective on your business from someone that you might not have before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, your merchandise assortment, which is what we're all here for, is
Mm-hmm.
really begin to actively seek out minority owned brands. And
Yeah.
yes, it is more difficult because they're not represented at the trade shows, which is what we're trying to fix.
Right.
Right? They're not
So
represented
true.
because of the funding, the lack of resources, all the lacks. Yes, it is
Mm-hmm.
more
Mm-hmm.
difficult, but Instagram is great. Like,
Right.
are there. Like, look at a hashtag. I know in Atlanta, for example, hashtag made in ATL or made in
Mm-hmm.
Atlanta will show you some Atlanta
Mm-hmm.
brands who are local. And I'm sure you can go through there and find founders of color. So
Mm-hmm.
there's many ways. And also, a lot of platforms now have filters for Black owned brands or BIPOC brands. So you just have to put forth a little bit more effort, and my nonprofit will help you with that. So that. But even how Latoya does, Latoya, how you go to different countries to source and find artisans and create relationships to make
Mm-hmm.
products from diverse people. Like, why don't you tell us
Mm-hmm.
like an example of one of your favorite places to go to source?
Um, so Oaxaca is one of my favorite places in all the world to source from.
Mm-hmm.
It's this one tiny place in Mexico, but the craft culture there is so rich and so deep that outside of the city center, each little village has its own craft culture. There are
Mm-hmm.
weavers, there are basket weavers, there are ceramists, and there's not just ceramists, but they each deal with different types of clay. So you have red clay, you've got black clay, you've got so it's so wonderful. But like
Yeah.
you're saying, it's being intentional to do research. I had to do research about Oaxaca.
Yeah.
I found a friend, a woman who just happened to grow up here in Atlanta, but who lives in Oaxaca now. So when she flew back to
Hmm.
Atlanta, I was like, hey, let's talk. And she runs a business taking people on artisan trips to Oaxaca. So she's
Oh
super
wow.
connected. Yeah. to the artisan community there. So like you said, Instagram is such a wonderful tool. It's just using, I mean, there's literally hashtag Oaxaca ceramist, like hashtag
Wow.
Oaxaca. I mean, yeah, it just doesn't take much. You,
Mhm.
like you said, I just think that you have to look at your business and say, how can I be intentional? And then take those steps to find those. And
Mhm.
especially, and I love sourcing from the US, to be completely honest. I love sourcing locally.
Yeah.
Because it's introducing me to makers in my own community that I didn't even know existed. And so
Mhm.
it's always exciting to me. And the cool thing too is about Instagram is once you kind of start following one person, like that will lead to another, that will
Sure.
lead to another. And so you can find that. Find those voices really easily. And
Mhm.
I find that so exciting as a
So
retailer.
exciting.
Right, because you're
True.
like, what new is going on? And again, what new can I bring to my customers
Mhm.
that perhaps they haven't seen very much? And so,
Exactly.
yeah,
And
there's so
it's so
much
true.
good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think one of the common questions that I always get from retailers is like, well, how do I not look like everybody else, and how do I find unique
right,
products? This is how.
right, right.
This is how. And
Totally.
we know these aren't changes that are going to happen overnight.
Yeah,
Like we know that, but oh, and if they do happen overnight though, like
right,
a brand and then
right,
having them announced next day, yeah, that's not genuine, and we know
right,
it. Everyone can see right through that, so you don't want that to
right,
be you.
right.
Diversity is not a trend.
Mm,
So if you remember anything,
hallelujah. Right,
diversity is not a trend. And
right,
so what does that mean? That means that for it to be a long-term initiative for your company, like it needs to be woven into everything that you do and into your culture. So
right,
just know that. But
right.
Latoya, so as we wrap
Mhm.
up, what is your store's vision for this year?
So our vision for 2021 is really to go deeper so that we can go broader. I feel like I've opened 3 different stores in 18 months. So I started out at a kiosk at Pont City Market that was like 163 square feet. And then we transitioned to that, to doing a pop up in a restaurant as we waited for our permanent space to get built out. And then obviously, COVID kind of extended that out. So we were kind of stuck in this limbo
Mhm.
pop up space for several months. And then, end of August, we were able to open up our permanent um, storefront there, which is super exciting. But I'm like, okay, now it's time to really plant roots here, get our structure down, really, really hone in and know what our voice is as a brand so that in 2022 we can launch and start opening other stores.
Ooh.
Yeah, so that is the goal. So really planting roots with our vendors, with our customers, um, and with my staff, my amazing team, getting our policies and procedures and all of that kind of stuff solid. Because yeah, so my goal is growth, but I want to do it in a healthy manner, and not just do it because yeah, like it's a trend and it's really hot
Mhm.
right now or whatever. I'm like, we
Right.
want to do it right. Um, but like you said, diversity has always been the heart of our business, but we continue to push ourselves. We continue to say, okay, what are other voices that are missing in the
Mhm.
conversations that we're having within our store? I'm constantly looking for inspiration wherever I go. I think as store
Mhm.
owners, we should always remain open to that. So something new that we've worked into the store as almost like a response to COVID, is for me personally something that was comforting for me. was going to antique stores. I
Yes.
just loved it. It was a time for me to just get out of the house, go somewhere, forget about everything that was going on, and just look
Mhm.
for inspiration. We love to have unique products in our store.
Mhm.
And so it was just really self-care for me. But then I realized, oh, we could work this into our store. Yeah, I was like,
Right.
buying found and vintage items is another form of sustainability. You don't always have to
Mhm.
buy brand new things, but
Yeah.
things that were often crafted by hand, and are old, were made so well, and they're so unique and they're so different. So it was fun to kind of take that idea and that place of inspiration and self-care for me, and to start incorporating it like into the store.
Right.
So just again, remaining open and inspired, all the time, and again, always looking around and saying, how do we add new voices and new things
Right.
into this space to make it exciting, so that we don't remain stale? And because it is such a huge market, we
Mhm.
all want to stand out, right?
Right.
And we all want a story to tell. So I think
Love it.
continuing to just write your story, like, you don't have to, like, it doesn't have to end anywhere, there doesn't have to be a period.
Mhm.
And be bold, and to do that, and be intentional. Don't be afraid of intentionality. I think a lot of, especially Eurocentric people, are scared of being intentional when it comes
Yeah.
to, um, dealing with people of color. They're just like,
Mhm.
oh, but that's weird. It's not. Just do
Right.
it. So I was like, don't overthink it. Find
Yep.
brands you love, because
Mhm.
you will. I think too that there's a bias that Black brands are not as good or
Yes.
as whatever. That's a lie.
Right.
So just hear that right now. That's a lie. Go find those brands and those people you love, and reach out to them and get them in your store. Stop overthinking it,
Mhm.
just do it.
Love
And you'll love
it.
it.
Absolutely. And the other thing I'll clarify too is that we're not, by saying, your store should be diverse and if that's something that you want, we're not saying that you should
Mhm.
have a sign that says Black products.
Oh, please, yes.
Not
No.
what we're
No.
now we're saying.
No.
The
No.
reason why it
Yeah.
appears that way right now, and there's filters on wholesale websites and whatnot for Black owned brands or BIPOC brands, is because there's such a little amount of them that
Right.
they have to provide a way for you to find them. But
Right.
as the industry evolves and it becomes more diverse, that won't be
Right.
necessary. You'll be able to go to
Right.
a trade show and see, you won't even need like designations per se, because
Right.
everything would be diverse there. So you'd be
Right.
shopping as normal. So your store
Right.
can have, obviously you can highlight them, right? But the future of this is not to have a Black owned section. It's for
No.
everyone to walk
God,
in
no.
and then
Yeah.
everything is diverse. So
Right.
much so that you don't even really have to have that conversation. That's the
Right.
goal.
And don't feel like, and don't shout it from the mountaintops, for the
Yes.
love of God. Don't be
Yes.
like, we now carry Black owned brand, like, don't,
Right.
like, let the products speak for themselves, and
Yes.
know that your financial support of those businesses are making all the difference in the world.
Yes.
Like, it's not about you.
Right.
It's about
Right.
them, and it's about your customer, and again, introducing them to more diverse brands for their good. And then
Hmm.
your financial support of those brands is, you are saying so much with your dollars, period.
Absolutely.
So
Love
do not feel like
it.
you need to wear a t-shirt or put out a banner or make it an
Right.
Instagrammable moment.
Hmm.
Just do
Absolutely. Perfect
it.
way to end the conversation. No, this has been so great. Latoya, thank you so
Yeah.
much. And
Thank
let
you.
everybody know how they can meet you or see your store and follow you on social media.
Yeah, all the ways. So our brick and mortar is at Pont City Market in Atlanta, but we're also online at yoursustainablehome.com. And we're on Instagram at Sustainable Home Goods. So those are the three ways you can reach out. Love to chat. about this stuff and a little bit more about our process if you have questions. But thank you so much, DeAnna. You're
Of course.
amazing. And thank you for being a champion for small businesses. Like,
Every
you are
day, all day.
amazing. Yeah,
Yes.
I know.
And I love to talk with anyone. I always say a lot of the first step to a lot of these conversations is just talking to somebody who doesn't look like you. And so
Right.
if that's you and you don't have any friends or people in your circle that look like you, I'm happy to be that person. So you can find me on Instagram at DeAnna J McIntosh, and actually on all the platforms with that. And or DeAnnaMcIntosh.com, and my nonprofit Diversify Retail. You can go to diversifyretail.org or Diversify Retail on all social platforms. So thank you all. Have an amazing market and cheers to a
Yeah.
better 2021.
Please. Cheers,
Please.
everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.